strongest, oldest, bestest friends, all sharp.
Awesome. Yes.
What we're going to do is I'm going to break it down for you real quick. We are going to work on edge weapons and how to defend against an edge weapon, which will also apply to any weapon within arm's length. And I'm going to show you guys the single most effective way to take care of this problem and how to train it every day. Okay? And you guys are like, man, I don't want to think about that crap because that sucks. You're right, it does. So that's why I'm going to show you a couple things that I do to kind of take our path into more of the light side of it rather than the gloom and doom side of it.
I actually had a call where a guy had carved all the inside of his forearm muscle out.
Yeah.
You know, he had just gouged himself, you know, and tore himself all up, and he's still able to, you know, manipulate. He's still able to fight me very effectively.
Which is kind of amazing.
Yeah, he was under the influence, but still, I mean, he was able to fight really well. Yeah. Myself, another officer, he's now a brown belt, was helping me with this guy, and we both, man, it took both of us to handcuff him.
Yeah.
Because I was able to get on his back and choke him unconscious.
Yeah.
And then he would wake up. Yeah. The second I'd let off of his neck to get his arms to try to cuff him. Yeah. He would wake up and he just pushed himself off the ground with me on him. And yeah, then fighting our attempts to handcuff him by grabbing our hands. Yeah. You know, was just freakish.
So he still had grip strength.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said you saw him later, and he still has a holes.
Yeah, he still has big gouges in here where the muscle's missing. Yeah, you know, he permanently scarred himself. Yeah, you know, he did a lot of damage to himself.
It's amazing what the body can do with adrenaline, especially.
We are a resilient machine. Yeah, you know, a very durable machine. So, yeah, I mean, if you're going to use a knife to defend yourself, you know, then you need to be punching holes in vital areas. Right. Because it's a lethal weapon. Absolutely. There's no question about that. There's no. You're never going to be able to stand in court and say, oh, I just meant to hurt him a little bit. Mm-hmm. The judge is going to look at you like you've lost your mind. Right. You know, who's your attorney? Right. You know, who told you to say that? Right. You know, you hit somebody with a knife or you go after someone with a knife, it's lethal force.
Yeah, you were afraid for your life.
Yeah, imminent threat. So there's no question.
So now I'm making a point to get across to my guys every time, like when we have our mat chats and when we talk about stuff, you know, kind of just hanging out a little bit in the gym, and I try to express or get across to them that, hey, you know, when you're dealing with a person with a weapon, the most important thing is to control that weapon-bearing arm. And when we do arm drags and when we do back takes or we do any of this kind of stuff in here, what are we doing? We're monitoring hands and we're controlling hands, and we're not letting them have their own, like, thought process. Like, they're not allowed to decide what to do with their hand. We're going to decide. And so that applies to a weapon. If the guy has a knife or a gun or whatever it is, I'm just not going to let him have that arm anymore. Like, I'm going to control that as much as possible. And so I think where I've kind of lost the ball a little bit with my guys and gals is that I didn't stress that enough through the years. Like, listen, every time you do an arm drag to a 2-on-1, you just controlled a weapon-bearing arm. Like, if that guy had a knife in that hand or a gun or whatever it was, the second you took control of his arm, you took it off of you and you kept it off of you. That basically is all you needed to do in a self-defense situation.
We're going to start talking about Multidisciplinary Optimization Course 2.0. So in 2.0, there's not a whole lot that's going to be different. It's just adaptations based on your level of athleticism, your understanding of jiu-jitsu. Remember, everything we do is jiu-jitsu for self-defense. Our self-defense program is based in jiu-jitsu, whether it's a knife, a stick, some sort of firearm, or empty hands. It's always going to be based in the principles and our understanding of jiu-jitsu. So let's talk about impact weapons, because impact weapons, almost by definition, end up being improvised weapons. People pick things up and try to cave somebody's head in with them. Once somebody does that, they have crossed the line of imminent defense of life or serious bodily injury. Clearly, if I'm holding a weapon, an impact weapon of any type, it could be a lamp, it could be a water bottle. I've seen a guy beat pretty bad with a water bottle. He had a bunch of like half-moon cuts in his head from the base of the water bottle, cracking him in the skull. They were pretty bad. So anything like that, it's going to cause serious bodily injury. You need to deal with it. So with that out of the way, let's talk first about the verbal component. In the original MDOC, we talked about managing unknown contacts. That's a term that comes from Craig Douglas and William April. And it's just basically how to deal with someone that you don't know, who's approaching you and you just don't want to have anything to do with them, how to avoid, deter, and de-escalate before it becomes a situation. Now, as we move further into this stuff, we want to have an understanding or an application of this material that applies to everything in our life. Just like jiu-jitsu, I want jiu-jitsu that works on and off the mat. I also want jiu-jitsu that makes my students and myself a better person. And so when we come to this kind of stuff, we want to talk a little bit about cadence, tone, and volume. So when we're dealing with an unknown contact, we have the ask, tell, make, right? So we ask them to stop right there. Then we tell them, and if necessary, we make them. When we're dealing with people that we know, or even people that we don't know, we want to start thinking about how to take this a little further, increase our understanding and knowledge of communication and verbal de-escalation, deterrence tactics and strategies. So one of those things that we could do is we can start to control the tempo of the conversation. If someone's talking quickly, they're angry, they're agitated, they are amped up, the first thing we have to do is bring it down. So we want to bring the volume down. You might match them for a moment. So I might bring my volume up to where they are, and then I'm going to start bringing my volume down. I might bring the cadence, the speed at which I'm speaking up to match theirs, and then bring it down. I'm intentionally doing this for the purpose of slowing them down, taking control of the conversation, and taking control of the direction of the conversation. I don't want to just get into a situation where we're just butting heads, waiting for the first person to throw a shot. All right, so we'll give you an example of that real quick. So what's going to happen is I'm talking to Jill, and I'm talking fast. I'm going to ask her some questions like, hey, what's with that shirt? What is that shirt about? Is that Straight Plus Gym? Is that where Conor McGregor trains? Do you train with Conor McGregor?
Give me a minute and I'll answer your question.
Yeah, so she's slowing me down, and she's also controlling the cadence and the speed of her words and phrases. So I started in law enforcement a little over 20 years ago, in 1998, and it was kind of a family business, so to speak. My grandfather was a sheriff, my great uncles were sheriffs, my cousins were deputies and officers in departments, and so I didn't go into law enforcement until later on in life, until I was almost 30. But once I got in, I kind of knew this is where I belonged, like I felt like home. And while I was there, I was able to do undercover work. I was able to work as a member of the SWAT team, as a resident officer, which means I live in an at-risk neighborhood, and try to bring all the energies and the agencies of the city to help, kind of liaison role to help improve that neighborhood, make it better. Work with people in the neighborhood as well, so that was really important in my development as an officer and as a person. And then from there, I came out of that and I became a neighborhood officer, which is kind of a lighter version of the resident officer. And then I spent the rest of my career as a patrolman, as a patrol officer, and I was involved in training as a range officer as well. I was one of the lead pistol instructors at my agency. And then I focused entirely all of my energy on my gym, which is the Straight Place Gym of Illinois. It's a martial arts and fitness facility, and focused all my energy now on helping people bring their best self to the world. And I do that through Brazilian Jiu-jitsu and fitness and kickboxing, and then also teaching the multidisciplinary optimization course to folks, as well as assisting the guys in ShivWorks. Started training with Matt. Just loved it, loved everything we did. At the same time, concurrently, I was a police officer, and I was working in a town that's pretty busy. And we were, like most places, we're about 100 officers understaffed, that kind of thing. And just running, call to call to call every day. And I was having an opportunity to get tangled up with people on a regular basis. Everywhere from just harsh words up to, weapons, and having to deal with that and solve that problem. And in the beginning, I had an issue with a guy. He was an enforcer for a gang. I ran into him, and it came out as a very benign call. It came out as a vehicle versus a house accident, traffic accident. So I go back there, I find this, it's back in a maze. You know how like typically around parks, like a street will Like say you have like North Street, it runs into the park and then it continues on the other side of the park. So this was one of those things where there's a park right in the middle of this line of streets. We couldn't find it. The homeowner was just like, hey, the guy's out here in the car screaming. I don't know if he's hurt or what's going on. So we get there, finally find it. I get there by myself. I'm on probation. And so I'm complete rookie. Like my shoes, like there's guys that I'm working with, their shoes have more time on the job than I do, right? So I'm just a complete rookie. I find the guy, he's sitting in the car and he's agitated. And he had run into the side of this house, probably doing the same thing we were doing, driving around this park trying to figure out how the streets work. And he was drunk and on PCP and a whole bunch of other stuff we found out later. And so I walk up to the car and I'm like, you know, sir, can you step out of the car? I'm still thinking like medical emergency. Like he's bumped his head or he's hurt in some way. And I'm like, can you please step out of the car? Blah, blah, blah. And he just starts screaming, fuck you, pig. I'm a cop killer. And I was like, okay, so, all right, but are you injured? You know, I'm still thinking like, are you hurt? You know, and I'm just like, whatever, man, you're angry. And long story short, he gets out of the car, he was going up and down, you know, like just massive mood shifts to screaming, to crying, to screaming, to, is everything okay, officer? Like, you know what I mean? Like that weird, like, and I'm not tracking him. I'm not keeping up with his pace that he's setting. And finally he goes, you want me to get out of the car? And I was like, that would be awesome. Just get out of the car. So I could just get out of the car. For one, when he ran into the side of the house, he hit the gas pipe that feeds the house, you know, propane, whatever it is. And I was like, man, let's get away from this because it's starting to smell out here like gas. And so he looks at me, he says, you want me to get out of the car? I was like, that'd be fantastic. You know, get out of the car. As he gets out of the car, he swings and clips me, catches me on the side of the head, dumps me into the car or into the side of the car, and then it's on. And we're just scrapping. And he's a big kid. He's like 240, 250. And we're scrapping. Somewhere in there, I slipped and fell and ended up under the car door. I'm trying to push myself up. I'm stuck under the car door. I'm trying to get up, and he's kicking me in the head. And then somewhere in there, I noticed my gun's loose. And so then we're fighting over the gun. The gun's under my chin, back under his. We're fighting back and forth. I can feel his finger pressing the trigger because it's my hand is. We're both grabbing the gun. And what saved me from getting killed was the gun got pushed out of battery. So the slide got pushed down so that the trigger was being pressed, but it wouldn't ignite. So it was malfunctioned. So that's what saved my life, not my great skill or anything like that. But so we end up, long story short, end up basically throwing him onto the ground. And once we hit the ground, I went into jiu-jitsu mode. See, standing, I was trying to do everything they taught me in the academy. I was trying to do like the PPCT. I was trying to do like the brachial stun. And I was trying to do all these things they had taught me to do because I had this disconnect between what I do every day and what I thought would work in a street fight. Does that make sense? Like I had this thought in my head, like there's still this mystical difference. There's this divide between the two. And we're fighting in the street and we're fighting over my gun. And so I got to do magical stuff, right? And then when we hit the ground, we get to the ground and I went right into jiu-jitsu mode. I'm knee riding him and I'm just basically doing classic old school jiu-jitsu where you knee ride the guy like the old pictures of Hickson knee riding a guy and punching him in the face. I'm just knee riding and cracking him. He turns over just like every Gracie jiu-jitsu, you know, Gracie in action video we've ever watched, right? The old school stuff where the guy turns over onto his belly. I get on his back and I'm like, and put him unconscious. Handcuff him, sit him up just as my backup gets here. Now, meanwhile, my back, I can hear sirens. Like my radio got knocked open, right? The key got bashed open so they can hear us fighting. And they can hear, you know, me saying, let go of my gun. So they know it's getting bad. So I can see, you know, lights driving. They're trying to figure out how to get to me, but the park's in the way. They finally get there and they're like, what the heck? Like they turn him over and he's messed up. Like it required 67 sutures to put his face back together. And everybody gets sorted out. We get everything put away. And I sat there and I was like, what in the world was I doing? Like, why didn't I just like crack and take down? Like, why didn't I just like get hit? I get hit harder than this in the gym every day. So this is 2000. So this is right after I had trained with Matt. I was already an instructor in a straight place gym. Like, I was already like doing what we do every day. But mentally, I was thinking, well, you know, break your stun, control the arm, you know, armbar takedown, and none of this stuff is working. You know, meanwhile in the gym every day, I'm just cracking dudes in the face and I'm getting cracked and I'm working takedowns. But then I thought, when we got to the ground, I just went straight into jiu-jitsu mode. Why did I go into jiu-jitsu mode? Because in the police academy and in all the training we had after the police academy, never once did we do groundwork. So my only option for ground was what I always did. So I immediately clicked into, let's do some jiu-jitsu, bro. You know, and then I wrecked him. And so I had to go back and think about why I did that. And then also realize that it's ridiculous to think there needs to be a divide. And from that point forward, I just did what we do all the time. Whether it's just a drunken dude who just needs to be sat down or escorted off the bus or whatever the case may be, or if it's some guy trying to kill me, which occurred again several times, right? Working undercover and in other capacities, people try to kill me numerous times. I always just did sports stuff. I always just boxed them, judoed them, or jiu-jitsu'd them, or a combo of the three. And sometimes with a weapon in my hand and sometimes without. Sometimes they had a weapon, sometimes without.
What is your opinion of the role of small fixed blade knife in self-defense, including things like, and then he lists a bunch of different types of small knives, reverse edge knives, punch daggers, folding knives, etc.
Yeah. So fixed blade is always going to be faster.
Okay.
Easier to access if you're worried about defending yourself. If that's your concern, you're going to be behind the curve. You know, you're going to be reactionary. You can't just, you know, pull your weapon out the second. Yeah, exactly. Like the second you feel like
the ballet song.
Yeah. You can't just like start whipping stuff out. You know, excuse me while I whip this out.
Yeah.
You know, you can't do that. There's always going to be a speed advantage. There's always going to be a acquisition advantage. You know, it's easier to get it into play than say like a folding knife or that kind of thing. So
let's take that a step farther. Who would you recommend carries knives, or do you recommend that people carry knives?
So I do recommend that people would carry something if they feel the need. You know, like I would never tell somebody not to. Yeah. You know.
So if they personally feel like they should,
then they should.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I look at it. You know. And then of course, like in the United States, it's easy. You know, for the most part. There's some states where you know it's kind of restrictive, but if you feel the need, man, and
Okay. And how much training would you have them do with that?
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot.
Which is the responsibility part that comes along with it.
Yeah, and knowing the laws.
Yeah.
You know, all that good stuff. But the probably the most important training they need to do is learning how to make space, learn how to control that space, control the hands. Because I can have like the coolest, you know, most wicked, you know, knife on the planet.
Right.
You know, like this thing could have some sort of whatever Dungeons and Dragons sorcery spell on it. You know,
cool, yeah.
+3
dagger.
+3 dagger. It could be something really cool. But if I can't make that space because I don't know how to shrimp, or I don't know how to bridge, or I don't know how to
fight,
I don't know how to hand fight. I don't know how to like tie this guy up so I can access it. Then. So if some dude's getting ready to smash me or I'm getting past, what do? I don't do this. It's the opposite of what we train all the time. So what do we need when it's going to be a oh my God moment? I can't believe this is happening. And the last thing I need going through my head is, what did I do at that seminar like 15 weeks ago? Right? What did I do yesterday in the gym? Oh yeah, frame. All right, so we're just going to shut them down right here and stop it. We'll go into the next step now. One of the questions that also comes up is, at what point do I intercept? And I always tell people you're probably already going to be stabbed at least once before you realize the knife's in play. Unfortunately, that's how it works.
I've had friends that have been stabbed. I've been stabbed. There's guys in this room that have been stabbed. If they want to share their story, that's cool. And they all say the same thing. I didn't know a knife was in play until I either saw it or it hit something hard, like a bone, where it was like, ow, you know, and then you realize. Or one of my friends got stabbed in the face. That's when he realized it was a knife. Prior to that, he thought we're just hooking and jabbing. And then he realized, Choom. So that's why I don't worry too much about where do I intercept. Just do what we do every day. Guy gets within arm's length, puts his hand on you. What are you going to do? Frame him out and lock down. So then what's the next thing we want to do? What should I probably do to the weapon-bearing arm, regardless of what the weapon is? Isolate it, right? If that's the most dangerous attack coming at me in judo, jiu-jitsu, or boxing, what do we do to that attack? Isolate it and shut it down, correct? We don't do something goofy that we don't do every day. Just going to do what we do all the time. So I'm going to shut it right here, and I'm just going to drop my shoulder in here, that connection again, right? I want to know where he's at, and I'm going to put both hands on here like a baseball bat. Okay? Now, that's not to say if you have the skill, again, to go right here, arm drag into a 2-on-1, by all means, do that. I would say do that if that's your skill level. But if you're here, you just got rattled, you're trying to figure out what's going on, you realize there's a knife, do this until you can figure out what to do. You can still go arm drag, you can still go 2-on-1, and we will do that. But for right now, I want the sequence to be shut them down, okay? You have them give you a little resistance, a little push and a pull, make sure you got them shut, and then go here.
But I think we forget sometimes about that Japanese origin.
Yeah.
You know, where, yeah, this was a warrior art, man. This was an art for people that were going to be in a weapons environment, you know, and so the weapons thing shouldn't be foreign to us. It shouldn't be like this, well, that's a totally separate thing. It's like all the
grappling and
principles.
the weapons just go hand in hand. It's not grappling and striking. It's grappling and the weapons
Yeah,
that go hand in hand.
yeah, definitely. You know, because the most important thing you can do is connect to that weapon-bearing arm and control it.
Yep.
You know,
Or vice versa.
put pressure. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think there's a good, you know, Craig Douglas and those guys, the guys from ShivWorks, they do, you know, we do this stuff where we'll give people 2 simunitions guns, put them in a car, and they have basically a fight in the car. It's kind of a worst case scenario, carjacking, whatever type thing. Things kind of went wrong, and he got hosed. His first, what we call evolution, kind of his first round, he got hosed by a guy that never should have been able to deal with him. And like, hey, dude, what are you doing? And he's like, well, you know, I really didn't know what to do. I mean, I've never had a guy hold a knife on me, so I didn't know what to do with that. Like, arm drag him, dude. Get on top of him, pin him down, and wreck him. You know, he's like, oh, yeah. You know, he like had this epiphany that just do what you always do, man. You know, you don't need to do something different. So I think there's kind of this disconnect. Like they think now that there's a weapon involved, maybe I got to do something different. And once you explain that to them, once you tweak them just a little bit, like, okay, man, just focus your effort on that arm alone, shut that down, and then do everything else like you normally would. And once you do that, now all of a sudden you got a beast. I mean, now you got this guy who's like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. Arm drag. Don't let him have that arm back. And just go. Treat it like a submission that you're not going to let go of, you know, and then on it. And all of a sudden, these guys become beasts.
Around 2005, I went to Canada with Craig Douglas, the founder of the ShivWorks training group, and we taught a course together. And it was my first time seeing his coursework and my coursework kind of side by side, and we taught like a course. I don't know what else you would call it. You know, both of us teaching for half of the day and for both days, and it was really eye-opening and educational for me. Craig is a master instructor, and up to that point, I had not worked with folks who weren't athletes. All of my exposure training people had been primarily straight blast gym and SWAT guys, and so I was used to, because I had begun working also at a place called The Site in 2001. So I was used to working with guys who kind of came to me as a finished product. So working with people from ground zero up was a new thing. And Craig has that mastered because he had begun teaching at a police academy level. So recruits, people coming in off the street, fairly clueless, but ambitious and hungry and wanting to get after it. So that was an eye-opener. I never considered that before. And so Craig and I, through the years, continued to teach together. I continued to assist him as often as possible. And then I began to teach coursework. And as it went on, it began to get some momentum. So Craig and I sat down, and Craig said, listen, we need to design this, put some sort of system in place so it's systematic. It's not just helter-skelter, and you actually have an end goal in place. So you go through the 2 days, and by the end of the second day, they leave better than they showed up. And I was like, right on, let's do it to it. So that became the multidisciplinary optimization course. And Craig actually came up with the term because he's a word guy and an acronym guy. So he came up with all that, and it was aimed at folks who came to his coursework, the EWO, which is Edge Weapons Overview, and ECQC, which is Extreme Close Quarters Concepts. And folks would come to those courses and just get blown over by Hurricane Craig. He would just overload them with information, smoke them, and then they would leave. And so we were looking for something that would then fill the gaps. So people would come to my coursework, and I would do what I'm best at, which is designing drills to isolate specific portions of the fight, of the information, and then we just do reps. And so folks would come to my course, they would do easily 100 reps of each drill through the course of the weekend, and they would leave much improved. And so that was kind of the genesis of it. Since that time, it's progressed, it's evolved, so to speak, with input from a lot of different people. All the guys in ShivWorks, guys in Straight Blast Gym, guys outside, Master Chief Jim Carver at the site, guys like that would just give me input out of the kindness of their heart. I don't know why they'd give me. Maybe they thought, man, this guy's screwed up. Let me fix him. But they would come and they would give me input, and it was awesome. And I would tweak the course and continue to try to bring the best possible product to the people that trust me with their time, which is most important, and with their money, and hopefully it never happens, but maybe with their life if they have to defend themselves in a real fight. And so that's where the course has come from, and that's where it's headed. I'm Paul Sharp, and I want to introduce you to the MDOC coursework. MDOC is an acronym. It stands for Multidisciplinary Optimization Course. We want to teach you how to deal with everything from a harsh word to a hand grenade. Maybe figuratively on the hand grenade, but still, we want to do our best to prepare you for whatever it is you're going to run into. Now, here's how we do it. We're going to put a lot of emphasis on what we call ADD. Now, I'm not the one that came up with that. Andy Stanford did. Andy Stanford kind of codified it into avoidance, deterrence, and de-escalation, which is a perfect way to approach every conflict, whether it's somebody you know or somebody you don't know. We want to put the emphasis on winning fights by not being in that fight. Again, that's something that Dr. William April says. So you're going to hear me refer to these guys because their teaching and their material heavily influence what I present to you guys. I look at myself as the conduit. I'm just passing on good info that I've been able to gather over the last 25, 30 years of intensively studying this material. One of the things that we're going to do the first day is we're going to work on initiative. So the first day, we take you through initiative. That means you hit first, you hit fast, and you hit last. You don't wait around. You know conflict is imminent, and you got to get it on. Day two, it's all from the deficit, meaning they've already made a move on you, you found yourself in a hole, and you got to dig your way out. It's not optimal, but it can be done. First things first, you got to have the mindset that says, I'm not going to be stopped, I can't be beat, I'm ready to get it on. And so we'll work on all that as we go through the next 2 days. As you work your way through this coursework, I'm going to refer a lot to mindset. It's the most important element. If you don't believe that you can survive this, you're not going to. You talk to any EMT, you talk to any emergency room nurse or doc, and they'll tell you that if somebody comes in on the table and believes that they're going to make it, most of the time they will make it, barring the removal of the head from the body. So there's even a few people that will tell you that unless the head is removed from the body of your opponent, you probably shouldn't turn your back on them if it's a lethal situation, because Dead people have been known to come back to life. The human body is a resilient thing. It's a mechanism, it's a machine that's hard to put down. For those of you that are hunters, you'll know that it's pretty hard to put a deer down. It's pretty hard to put all kinds of things down. And people that have been in gunfights and lethal force encounters will tell you it's hard to put a person down. So the other side of that is we want to tap into that. We want to access that part of ourselves, that survival instinct, and bring it out in the worst case scenario. Hopefully you never have to do it, but we want to prepare you for when you have to do it. So what we're going to cover today is stuff based on that, like how do we tweak our sports stuff into street stuff. And you're going to see there's not a whole lot of tweaking you have to do. It's mostly just context. It's mostly, what if they have a weapon? What if there's more than one? We're going to solve those problems by putting you in those situations and let you work your way through so that you guys don't ever make the mistake that I made, which is, wait a second, I need something secret here. I need some like Krav Maga or something that we don't normally train every day. I need that because my sports stuff is going to fail out here in the wild. You know what I mean? You guys ever hear the analogy about the zoo lion and the wild lion? Like a zoo lion's still a lion, but if you put him out in the Serengeti, what's going to happen? He's going to die pretty quick because the wild lions are going to be like, bro, you're soft. You're not one of us, right? And so my thought process was that for some reason, what I did in the gym was like, it was lion-like, but it's not going to be that kind of lion. And the reality is, actually, the stuff that I do in the gym, that we do in the gym every day, is the lion stuff. And the other stuff is, it might be lion-like, but it's not a lion, right? It might be fighting-like, but it's not the fighting that we do. So when you do actually run into somebody, when I got to the ground with that guy, it was child's play. It was literally child's play. It was so easy. It was like every one of those videos you've ever watched of Gracie in action. You know those old videos? How many have watched those old videos? Right? Where they had the karate guy come in and he's tough and he's big and buff and everything. And then Pedro Sauer, one of those guys, just takes him down and tunes him up. A 165-pound guy just wrecks this big dude. And they're like, man, it's like playing with little kids. It's like going and jumping in on a 10-year-old Taekwondo class and beating them all up, you know? And being like, we're all the same belt though, you know? And it's like, but it's like that. When I got to the ground with this guy, all of a sudden, there was no more struggle because my brain shifted into the only option that I had, which was jiu-jitsu. I hadn't been trained to do anything else. So when we're out here, while we're working through this stuff, I just want you guys to remember what you're doing in here every day, the boxing, the kickboxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, that's all you need. Like, that is literally all you need. We're gonna make it dirty. We're going to teach you how to deal with weapons. We're going to teach you how to use a weapon if you need to. We're going to teach you how to deal with multiple opponents. Before the weekend's over, you're going to deal with multiple opponents. It'll be easy dealing with multiple opponents. But what I want you to understand is that every time you train in the gym from this point on, just understand you're making an investment in that ability to just wreck somebody in a self-defense situation. When we start talking about committing violence against another human being, which is essentially what it is, with taking all the nice words and fluff and everything off of that. First off, we have to understand that if you haven't been training, that's really going to be a big hindrance. One of the biggest obstacles for you is going to be mental, where you don't know if you can quite fulfill whatever it is that you commit to. So you have to be training. You have to be getting your time in. You have to be doing the work. We're going to actually work a knife defense system that I think is the very best system you can find without training knives. But what do I need to do damage to you right now, dude? Connection. I got to touch you. It's a contact weapon. So that means what? It's got to be in my hands, right? Can't do this, right? It's got to be in my hands. So what do we do every day in the gym? Hand fight. We control hands. We just did drill after drill, controlling hands, monitoring hands. All right? So let's do this. Everybody stand up. We're going to partner up, and we're going to work on our first drill. So we have to establish that connection. We have to get in there. Come here, Zach. So we got to establish connection with this dude. All I need to train this is to learn how to control this hand once it touches my body. Because if he was going to stab me with a knife, or if he was going to threaten me with a knife, and he's out here doing that, right? Like West Side Story, right? Right? When you're a jet, you're always a jet. But so we're out here. If he's doing this, what is this called? In the animal kingdom, what's this called? When they puff their chest? Posturing. Does it mean they really want to engage? Or does it mean they just want you to go away? They want you to be intimidated and skedaddle. So if that's all he's doing, and all it's about is my watch or my wallet, I don't care. Take it, dude. Like, I will drop that stuff and bail. Let him have it. So that's not the animal we're concerned with. What we're concerned with is the guy that's already here. This is the problem we have to solve right now. And what I have to stop first is this rotation right here. Okay? So as Coach Kane was talking about, right here, if I just do this and hang on for a second, we have attachment, but we aren't connected. He can still rotate, which is where the damage is going to start happening. He's going to start poking holes in vital spots, and it's going to suck to be me. So the first thing I want to do is connect my whole forearm across his chest right here. Elbow is far across, hand against the shoulder, and I'm just going to frame against his upper body so I can stop that rotation. My whole body's pushing. Like, I can't just do it. Remember, it's the worst day of your life. I've got to stop it. So, boom, I'm stopping him right there. Don't let him rotate. My second hand is going to do what? What do we do every day in the gym? Boom, monitor that hand. That's the first exercise I want us to do. You could probably stop right there and be good to go.
I always find it useful when you tell the story at seminars about when you were attacked by the gang members outside your house for a number of different reasons, because you're talking about using the core skills that we train in the gym, you know, the delivery system, and what happened. Do you want to tell that story?
Yeah. So I was a resident officer, so that means I lived in a neighborhood that was judged to be at risk. And I was inside, I was on the treadmill, and my first wife, mother of my kids, she came inside and said, "Hey, it's kind of icy outside. Do you mind, getting Mackenzie, my middle daughter, out of the car for me?" And it's no problem. And I walk out there to get my daughter, and as I walk out, I see a gang member that I know I've had issues with. And he's kind of standing over there, and I thought, again, talking about overriding instinct, right? So I see him, and I think, well, that's kind of weird. Why is he standing there with these dogs? Then I see another guy going down this fence line. So if you can kind of picture like a driveway with a fence, and then my car, which was a minivan, the mom van, is parked in the driveway with about a 3 or 4 foot wide gap between the house and the van. And then on the other side of the van is my squad car or police car and the fence that separates my neighbor's yard and my yard. And I see a guy who's also a gang member moving along the fence. And I think, well, what's he doing there? That's weird. And talk about just ignoring, totally talking myself out of my instincts. And I see him, going down the fence line. Well, about that time, I look up, and here we are. I'm getting my daughter out of the car, and I look up, and here's this gang member, and it's on, And so I put my daughter back into the van, the button to let the door shut, and we start scrapping, strictly boxing, wrestling, that kind of thing. Nothing different than what I do every day in the about that time, the guy that I had seen coming down the fence line, he came behind me. He actually was through the fence to get around behind me. He jumped on me. We're scrapping. And it's funny when those things happen, you have like those moments where everything kind of just like freeze frames, and you see like a push of something happen, and it just strikes you as funny. Some guys were going up onto my porch to go into the house. I guess their intent was to go after my wife or whatever. And then the guy that was holding the dogs decides to turn the dogs loose on me. Their intent was for the dogs to go after me, but I think the dogs finally realized for the first time they were turned loose, and all the people that were mean to them were like right there, and I wasn't one of them. So, so the dogs went after the gang members. They actually ended up helping me, you know, and they wrecked those dudes pretty good. So my last image, as I'm holding this guy down and I'm just beating him in the ear. And I look up and I see the dogs chasing the guy that had turned him loose down the street. So that was kind of funny in the middle of this scrap. But yeah, I mean, multiple opponents on ice. It was wintertime, slippery. I just used boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu type stuff that we use every day to deal with two opponents that were immediately on me, and then one guy that was coming at me pretty fast. I just hit him and then went back to dealing with this situation. But yeah, that was pretty hairy. But yeah, I again, all that did really was just kind of cement in my mind that what we're doing is enough.
For a 2.0 version of our ground fight, we want to look at different ways to take the skill that you develop on the mat and the time that you're putting in, the hours that you're putting in, and be able to apply that to self-defense and street fighting. So we're looking at different ways to attack from there. So if you're on the ground playing guard, we're not too worried about that. What we're worried about is side control, knee ride, mount, how to get disengaged from the person. So having the ability to stand up, to get away, is the prime directive really for our groundwork at this phase. You've already done all the work from MDOC 1.0 where it was holding mount, standing up from mount. We did those drills where, hey, stand up, get out of there, all that stuff from guard. Now we want to talk about how to do that from side control and from mount. So from positions of advantage, which is where you're probably going to be, how do I disengage? How do I get up and get away? I think the difference between my approach and a lot of the other approaches that you'll see out there is that I try to base it on where people really are rather than where they should be. Dr. William April likes to say the world isn't as we think it should be, it is as it is. And so you just have to deal with it. So if I have someone comes to me and says, hey, you know, I have my carry permit, I have a pistol, but due to my job, I'm a medical professional, can't carry a weapon. I know self-defense guys that will tell them, well, you need to dress around the weapon. You need to make it work. And as one of my members said to me one time, she's a nurse that works around an MRI all day. She's like, if I carried a gun in there, I'd be glued to the machine. Or the gun would be out of my waistband and glued to the machine, and I'd lose my job. So when you have self-defense experts who want to say, dress around the gun, or you should carry no matter what, despite rules and regulations, despite laws, you know, what they call a non-permissive environment, they tell people to carry anyway. I think they lack a little real-world experience. I think they lack what it's like to actually have a job. You know, these are usually people that have spent the bulk of their adult life on a range or in an environment where someone seeing them with a weapon didn't really matter. And so I think that the difference between myself and them is I've been in environments as an undercover where I couldn't be made. Like I couldn't have somebody see a gun on me. I couldn't have somebody figure out that I was the police. And I definitely could not be caught with a gun on me. And so walking into those environments, being able to handle myself, know that if I need to access something, I can, you know, but also knowing how to come out of that environment and bring that knowledge with me to apply that to how to train people. Say, you know, you have someone that works in a government building, they're not allowed to carry. Medical professionals, how are you going to carry in scrubs? You know, all these different things that people, a lot of self-defense guys don't think about, I've had to think about and give good, solid information to those people about what they can do in that situation, rather than leave them feeling like it's hopeless, I'm just a victim. You don't need a long, drawn-out dry fire routine. What you need is 15 minutes, 5 to 15 minutes of intense work on the fundamentals. Not only will it improve your skills, it'll maintain skills, it'll also improve your skills and push you forward in skill development. And that's what we're looking for with this. A sport-specific warm-up, similar to shrimping drills when you're doing jiu-jitsu, or shadow boxing when you're getting ready to kickbox or box. So Scott's a new shooter, hasn't really shot before, so what we're going to do is we're going to take him through how to mount and how to grip and mount the gun. Don't let me bend the gun. And now continue your frame here by not letting me move this around. Perfect. Now, your last thing is, you know how when we bridge up and into somebody, how we drive our chest up, try to make the connection and drive up. I want you to drive your chest straight forward as if you're trying to bridge into the back of the gun. So you're trying to drive the gun so that I can't push you back. Perfect. So every time you would mount the gun, you would kind of go through this self-check and make sure that the gun sits flat, just like that, every time you practice. One of our last dry fire exercises we want to do before we begin our movement series is an isometric exercise. So basically what I want to do is I want to train my body, again, to hold this gun as tightly as possible, create as strong of a structure and frame around the pistol as possible so that I don't have to think about it when it's time to go to work.